Chad Heckler, world champion, extraordinaire, miles to matches. You do okay at PRS. What else? Gunsmith. So many things that you do, man. How do you do it?
Sorry for being a little late. I was out flying this morning, so you can add that to the list.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm pilot. Did I leave that out? I apologize. Pilot.
No, I'm like so obsessed with it, but I haven't flown. I was telling you, I haven't flown in a few weeks. I'm like, hey, can we push this back? The weather looks good. How do I do it? I just have a drive to excel at whatever I choose to do, and there's certain things that interest me. And honestly, the interesting part about that is that we all evolve. I mean, you used to be interested in building the best barn dominiums and construction business you could, and now you were always like, there's things that you go through and phases you go through in your life. And I think that there's people that go to the nth degree to figure out how to be the best at no matter what they're doing. And then there's some people that want to, they just don't know how.
Are you the kind, because I'm speaking from experience, that you literally cannot sleep? You're laying in bed going, just something's bothering you. So this is what happens to me. Like anything, like you talk about building barn dominiums when I used to be a barn dominium builder, and I'd be laying in bed trying to figure out a way to maybe do it better, do it more efficiently. And I'd just be laying there. And then all of a sudden I get on my phone and start doing research and just, I almost couldn't sleep until I figured it out. And it drove me, whatever thing may have been, it drove me for a week or two, and then I'd figure it out, and then I'd move on to something else. Are you the type, or are you just the type that wakes up and that's kind of when you get it done?
I will say that I'm very fortunate in that I sleep really well. I don't know how that happens. There are nights, like probably 5% of the night, where it's exactly how you describe it. There's something that I need to figure out, or there's something that I feel like I'm forgetting, and it's a big piece to the puzzle. But for the most part, man, I sleep really well, and I feel like it's pretty important for maintaining your success to have good sleep.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I've
been told that. I just never been a great sleeper. I'm a terrible sleeper. I'm a light sleeper. There's always there's memes on the internet about, like, I'm trying to sleep and I'm like, where? All of a sudden, like, where is my birth certificate? I need to know where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's kind of the thoughts that go in my head for some dumb reason. And well, I guess you're lucky. Sleeping is not one of the things I'm good at.
I also think that I'm very good at, like, only focusing on the things that I feel like I can have control on. And what that boils down to is stress levels. Like, your stress levels are reduced when you realize that, nothing's ever going to be perfect, and you're always and you're only working on the things that you can control, so the rest of the stuff falls away. And I think I get that from one of my parents, and the other one is the exact opposite. They're always worried. And I saw this thing with Bill Burr. He's a comedian, and he's like, why ruin now by worrying about the future? Like, you're never enjoying anything if you're. He said it with a lot more swear words, by the way, and if you look it up, it's pretty funny.
When you quoted Bill Burr, I'm like, this is a Chad Heckler that I've never met before. Let's hear him.
Yeah, he's like, why the hell would I waste right now when worrying about later, when I can just ignore? I can deal with that later if it happens. And most of the time it doesn't happen, because you set up systems and you set up habits and processes to avoid the bad things from happening. You're much better spending your time and energy on that than worrying. So anyway, that was a weird topic, but
I took up golfing not long ago, and I was golfing with a guy. Yeah, I know. I was golfing with a guy, and there is a creek about 225 yards ahead. It's a par 5, so we're hitting our second shot, and he hits, and he just pured it. He hit it right down the fairway, and he's like, "Oh no, that's too long." So he throws his clubs down. He's super pissed off, and I said, "Hey, you don't even know if you went in the water yet." I had to. That was way. And I mean, he literally club on the ground, everything, super mad. Long story short, we get there, and it got right up to the creek, perfect lie, as short as he could to the green. Like, it was like the perfect shot. But he had already threw a fit, bent his clubs possibly over nothing, over literally the best shot that he hit all day. But
did it affect the way he finished that hole, or did he make the best of it?
Well, I made sure to point it out. I said, look, you threw a fit over nothing. Like, why worry about it back then? Get pissed off when you see, and by then, if you think about it, if he ignores it and assumes that it's a good shot and then he gets up there, he wasn't going to be as upset because, I don't know, I feel like you don't get as upset when it actually happens because now you had time to not react as the way he did. But anyway, that was a great example of worrying about something that may actually be a good thing.
Yeah, it gives you the perspective to look at future things differently, or it sets you on a different path, or it introduces you to a different technique or skill. I mean, one of my things is ad astra per aspera. I think it's the motto of Kansas, and it means through adversity to the stars. So, I mean, you can't get really great at something unless you understand the struggles and the failure points and the failure modes and how to avoid them. And lots of times we learn by encountering those things and working through them. And that's the fun part.
Don't want something so bad that you're willing to overlook something better. I live by that quite a bit. So anyway, don't worry too much. So, that's the first topic of discussion today.
Yeah.
So goal setting is what we talked about last time. And speaking of things taking an unexpected turn and worrying about something maybe you shouldn't have worried.
I was worried.
Right. And let's talk about that because, your goal was to make the Team USA.
Well, I mean, that was the goal I shared on the podcast, but the one I shared with you in private and in my head was I want to be a world champion. What I didn't realize is that there was a few different ways to do that.
Well, yeah,
I was offered the opportunity.
Yeah, you thought there was only one, or at least you had only considered one.
Yeah, and I put myself. I think when I messaged you about making the team, you were the first person I messaged, and I said, well, I made the team. I have to, the way I phrased it, I think was, but I have to shoot 308. And then since that point, I had reframed it in my own mind, not that I have to, but that I get to. It's a privilege to represent the country. And I was super nervous and anxious about shooting a cartridge that I had virtually zero experience with up until then. Because in the PRS, it's considered a disadvantage. And I know there's, FTR, what is that? The one that shoots the Palma and stuff like that. They all shoot 308.
We all shoot the Palma. A Palma is just a course of fire. But we have two classes in F class, and it's F Open and FTR. FTR is limited to 308 or 223.
So I had zero experience with 308, and then I found out that we had to shoot factory, and it turns out that we didn't have to shoot factory. We got to shoot factory. It was a privilege because it meant that I didn't have to do the extra work. I did not have to spend the time doing load development, and not that that's nerve-wracking. It's just more time in the schedule. So it meant that I could train. And I started flipping the way that I was looking at this as my second choice, and started treating it like my first choice, if that makes sense. Like treating it like this is my opportunity to do what I actually set out to do. And you were the first person I messaged when I got the invite, and you were also the first person I messaged when the award ceremony was over. It was I just figured that you would appreciate that, and
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was because you and I talked about goal setting not only on the podcast but off the air, and that's why I want to do that goal setting podcast with you. And there we discussed, and I told you, if it didn't happen, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah,
but
fact,
it was meant to be.
Well, you also said, you've done the work to put yourself in a position, and that's the best you can do. And then that turned around to be an opportunity. And then I took advantage of the opportunity and, won the match by 4 impacts out of 200. So wow. It was pretty awesome. I mean, and then to do that against some of my teammates, Scott Peterson, I don't know if you know who that is. He always shoots the 308 class in the PRS. You got Robert Brantley. I mean, you know who that is. And he's been shooting the 308 for multiple seasons now, and Ken Stanoski. And when I look at the 4 people that made up Team USA for the 308 limited division, I was like, okay, now I need to stack up against these guys. And by the way, don't underestimate the world, because the best 308 shooters in the world are there. But in my mind, first thing I did was take it to a local match and shoot the local match, finish top 5. The next thing I did was, okay, now I need to train on a few things. And I went to another local match. And these are one-day PRS matches, like 90 rounds. And I ended up winning the second match against everybody shooting dashers and BRs and Creedmoors, and there was 4 national match winners at this match, including myself. So I guess 3 others, and I won that match by 6 points with a 308 with factory ammo. And I was like, well, like I want this feeling to stick. I don't want to do this again. Not that I couldn't do it again, but I want to go into the world championships with this feeling. So I had, I think, 6 weeks from that point of that match until the world championships. And I trained by myself, but I did not intentionally go to another match where I was compared against other shooters because I wanted my mind to believe that I was the best and I could win it. I went into the match thinking I could win the overall. You know, there's no overall anymore. It's classes, but I wanted to have the most impacts for the match. And, you know, realizing that that's not super realistic. If I fell short of that, I still would probably crush it, you know? So I wanted to have super confidence in my equipment, my ammo, myself, my technique, my abilities. And I felt really positive going into it. It was an amazing experience. I mean, you've been to the world matches before and you get to, you know, bump elbows with all the world competitors and you probably know some of them, but, you know, get to know them a little bit better after hours. And that was, to me, the most exciting part that I got to participate in. Turns out, like, winning the match is fun too, but getting to hang out with all those people and put faces to names and voices was basically what I had told myself that I was going there to do originally, and it did not disappoint, that's for sure.
I'm pretty certain that this happened to you because most people don't realize that the world looks at us, the USA shooters, as like superstars. How many people met you and they were very honored to meet you and wanted selfies and all that stuff?
Yeah, that was all of them.
You know what I mean? So
it's kind of weird, but yeah.
It is indeed. But at the same time, you kind of realize, like, my goodness, what we do matters. You know, what we do, people are keeping an eye on. They look at us as the tip of the spear. You know, what we do matters. How we perform matters. It you know, sometimes you go, well, it really doesn't matter. It does matter, you know. And I think, at least for me, that helps a lot with my drive because it's not just me, you know what I mean? And that just, you know, I'm always trying to do as good as I can, but then I know that a lot of people are watching and they get inspiration by what we do. And it's when you go to World Championship that you really find out how many are out there looking at us.
But unfortunately for me, I'm not sure if it makes you react the same way, but it is an added layer of pressure that's almost more, like, because I'm, you know, let's just put everything else aside. You know, I'm a pretty humble individual. Like, I like to perform and then, you know, get the results and accolades afterwards. I'm not one that, like, feels like I deserve any of this. Like, I want to be a good example for sportsmanship, which I will be always, first and foremost. And I want to perform so that people are inspired. And that's one of the things that I think I was the most proud of, finishing the match the way it did, because I'm not a 308 shooter, but the fact that I was able to do it and it proved to me and to others that it's a viable cartridge for the PRS as a whole. I'm continuing to shoot it this year for that one of those reasons, to kind of inspire people to just show up and with whatever rifle you have, because most people do have a 308. So show up, have some fun. It will be competitive if you're up for the task. And then the second thing is, like, I guess my fundamentals were up to the task, because as nervous as I was still able to see bullets fly. I was able to see them land and make corrections. I mean, you're on Team Lapua. I'm on Team Vitavori. I shot that Lapua 175 CNR ammunition. It was incredible. Every time I shot it at 100 yards, I barely ever had a group over 3/8 of an inch at 100 yards. I mean, they were all just 5 shots, one ragged hole every single time. And so I knew that I could trust that, and being able to represent the companies that we represent and honestly bring back the 308 to the PRS with some legitimacy was way cool. And I'm going to continue to do it for sure. I'm in the process of trying to qualify for 2026 right now. I'm going to do that this year and do it with a 308 instead of with a 6BR.
That's amazing. Aren't the ballistics pretty close to each other?
So the bullet I'm shooting right now is the 168 Burger hybrids, and I've got them trued out to about a 264 G7, which the 105 hybrids are in that 275 range. So it's pretty similar. I mean, it does seem to get bullied a little bit more in the wind, but it's a lot more mass. You're going to see it on target. You're going to see it if you miss, and it's obviously more recoil. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty similar. As long as you can build a good position behind it and then be able to see your shots, as long as you're not losing your sight picture, stuff like that, you're gonna probably be pretty good with it.
You talked about training before the World Championship on your own. What kind of training were you doing?
So for me, training these days exists of me getting familiar with the rifle and the ammunition and the ballistics. And I do that also while shooting off of props. I don't have a set like process I do, but it's more important to me that I have confidence that when I send the perfect shot, it goes where I told it to go. And with the new cartridge and factory ammo, I thought that I needed a few hundred rounds to make that happen. I had only had 600 rounds on my barrel before I went to the match, and that's the entirety of my experience with a 308.
Wow, that's I did not expect that. I thought you'd put thousands before you went. But I mean,
I
like
was
you
nervous
said,
because,
like you said, I mean, you got tens of thousands of rounds through a rifle, right? This is just a slightly different configuration, but you know, it's just more of the same, right?
well, yeah, I only had 1,200 rounds total of ammo that Lapua sent me. And I knew I needed 400 for the match, between the match and a little bit of train up. So I did not want to cut it too close. So my goal was shoot 2 local matches and then 400 more rounds to train and make sure that it's fouled in, because I really like to know what my rifle does over the course of 100 rounds. Does it speed up? Does it foul? Does it give me, weird results? And the 308, from the first shot that I fired until the, 1,000th round, it only was 15 feet per second difference. Like literally from a bore that had never been fired, I think my first shot was 27.15. And when I was done with the match, I think it was 27.35. So 20 feet per second from a virgin bore to 1,000 rounds. And that was pretty surprising to me. I'm used to 6 mils that speed up. I know you say the 7 mil really doesn't speed up that much. So I think it's a bore diameter thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring this up. People think every barrel speeds up, and that's, I tell people, listen, start working up a load immediately. Don't go waste 100 rounds.
Agreed.
Just start working on it. If it changes, change with it. But don't waste 100 rounds or however many just going to the range and just blindly putting shots down range. Just so that you can, get the barrel speed up. If it's going to speed up, it's going to speed up. You'll see it. At least you'll have some data. If it was shooting good here, sped up, drop the powder charge slightly, and if it doesn't shoot as good when it speeds up, if it speeds up and it keeps shooting well, then you're done.
What does it matter?
Yeah, don't worry about it. But I've noticed that I've done a test, and I did 1 barrel, and I probably should do more, but I just that has and I used to be one of those that just go and shoot 100 rounds just to before I start load development. And now I'm round 1, just start work, load development. A lot of times what I do is I have ammo from my previous barrel. And if I have a new barrel, I just go and shoot that ammo through it and go sight it in, go do a practice match and see how it shoots. Sometimes they shoot incredibly well, and then I just load on each side of that charge to see if it holds up. And if it holds up, I'm done,
I think 9 times out of 10 that is the case. It will shoot well. And I'm maybe way off base when I say this, because I don't know everything, but I feel like it's more of a cartridge pressure that makes something shoot well. And the barrel bore dimensions and surface finish and condition will result in a different speed, but the cartridge is happy at a pressure. And so my previous ammo always works in the next barrel. It's just, do I want to go up 2 to 4 tenths, down 2 to 4 tenths? That's pretty much where I go.
Why would you go up or down?
I want to see if my point of impact moves around. We've never had a load development discussion, but
no.
over the course of 4 to 6 tenths of powder, I want to see that my average group center does not move. And then I pick the load that is towards the bottom end of that, so that if I do speed up or anything causes pressure increase, whether it's ammo temp or fouling or water, rain, whatever. Hopefully my point of impact doesn't shift. And in a perfect world, my point of impact would actually go down a little bit as my charge weight increases. So I love to see that.
Positive compensation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hope for it. It's not something that I shoot for, but man, I do get excited when I see it happen.
For some reason, these have become topics of kind of should not be discussed, because there's a lot of
care.
I know I don't care either, because I believe the target. You know,
Yeah.
You can tell me I'm wrong all day long, yet I'm shooting way better than the people that are telling me I'm wrong. So, hey, whatever. I'll be wrong.
And even if you're not, like, even if it is a placebo effect, it is a part of your mental game. So whatever. I really don't care.
But you mentioned the trending, of because shots do that, and of course I do it at 1,000 yards, to do it 100. But that's one of the things I look for, because you're going to see the groups as you increase powder. And this is proof that the barrel vibrates before the bullet leaves. Otherwise, it would just be a straight line up and down. But they move around and they move down, and they do all kinds of funny things as you increase powder charge. And what I look for is precisely what you mentioned. I want that as I increase powder, that the bullets stay flat. Like they don't go up and down on target at 1,000 yards. And it'll happen. It's a node, right? And it's like a rung on a ladder. It'll just stay there. And, depending on the cartridge, I've seen it up to 8/10, where I can overlay those groups at 1,000 yards. Nothing happens. And then you go up another 1/10 or 2, and all of a sudden it jumps way up. And I'm like, okay, I want to be in this happy place where, because, that's where your temperature, you travel, and that's where you can have issues. The worst part is when you're right at that point where it wants to jump up. That's where you get all that crazy vertical. But
well, it can lie to people too, because where it jumps up, like you're saying, might be a better group. And people are like, that's exactly where I want to be, right there. I'm like, no, dude, you're walking on a razor blade. I don't care. I honestly don't look at group size when I'm doing that part of the process. I just look at the average group center, and like you said, see if it's the same or if it goes down a 0.5 or whatever.
I talk about patterns all the time. I say, look, I'll shoot 3-shot groups, but I see how they pattern, and then if I get 9 shots or 12 that are just like stacked on top of each other, it's not a 3-shot group. It's a 12-shot group, but those are stacking right on top of each other. And then you shoot another 3 and they jump way up. Guess what? I don't want to be there, and I don't want to be here, the ones that are way below. But that cluster of, if I'm going in 3 or 4 tenths increments of either 8/10 or 1.2 grains that are just clustered together, there's something there. That's kind of, that's where the rifle's happy. That's where everything's happy, right? And you know what? I load that way, and I can travel the world. I have, and those rifles will just shoot just everywhere, And
agreed. I've never had a problem flying the matches and having something weird happen with my ammo.
I shot PRS for a while, and everybody, the majority of people, they get to the match, a day early, practice day, and they go and they sight in their rifles, and it seemed like almost everybody had their zero had shifted. So there they are, re-zeroing their rifles. Is that something you do, or is that something that you shouldn't do? What? Tell me about that.
I'm very obsessive at knowing where my zero is and knowing where it evolves to, we'll say, throughout the course of a day or throughout the course of 100 to 200 rounds. These are all variables that could and probably will cause your zero to shift around. Light conditions, the surface condition of the ground, what you have your bipod setting on. There's all the angle of fire. If you're shooting, really downhill versus really uphill or flat at your normal range. I won't go to a match without knowing exactly where my zero is on my home range. So I have a data point. I have a reference point. And then when I get to a match, it has probably happened 1 out of 15. I don't want to say that I never change my zero, but I know what my potential zero shift could be, and it's normal, like just for all those conditions combined. And if it's 2/10, I have a hard time not adjusting it because I flew on a plane and got banged around. I don't take my scopes off. I leave them on there. So should you just adjust your zero? I see a lot of people making it perfect, and they don't understand how to put the wind in their Kestrel and see what aerodynamic jump is and what the wind will do to their zero at 100 yards, because it absolutely is a factor. So I see a lot of people, that's the biggest mistake. The second biggest mistake is not knowing what the light will do to your bullet and point of impact, and potentially how they're shooting. I don't know how else to say that. Like, you can influence your zero by how you build a position behind the rifle.
You talked about the light. Can you elaborate on that?
I wish I had the perfect answer. But the theory is that the bullet follows the light, like where the direction would be. And so it's not that the bullet is being moved, obviously. It's that your optic is sensitive to the direction or the way that the light comes into it. I've never seen it move more than a half a tenth to a tenth. That's why I don't really get excited unless my zero is more than a tenth away from where I expect it to be when I zeroed it at home. And then I still don't change my zero unless I shoot at distance, because some ranges have some weird conditions going on that I can't explain. But I will take, if my zero's not right, if it's 2/10 low, we're just going to say, I will shoot it at distance and see if it's a tenth or two low. And if it is, then I will absolutely do something about it. I prefer to use my Kestrel. If it's less than 2/10, I will adjust it in my Kestrel. If it's more than 2/10, I'll adjust it a tenth and shoot it again and see what it is. I like my zero to be low, like a half a tenth low, because I know throughout the day my speed is never going to go down, because you got ammo temp, ambient temp, you got fouling. So I just like, as a default, for my bullet to basically be tucked up under, my aiming point, right, just barely low, half a bullet low. And I also like my bullet to hopefully be half a bullet left, to, just not have to mentally worry about spin drift on KYLs. Sometimes there's KYLs in that 400 or 500 yards, and I'm just kind of thinking, okay, there's spin drift. I'm going to default towards holding, right on if there's no wind. It's just, and maybe it's superstitious, and maybe it's something that just allows me to always know where my zero is, but it's something that I do every single time. I want it tucked in the low left corner of my point of aim. And as long as you know where it is, it doesn't matter. If you see me at a match, I see on my left hand, you'll see the crosshairs, and you'll see where my bullet is for my zero, like every time. You can walk around and shake hands with me, and you'll see that my zero is on my hand. I know exactly where it was at.
Wow. That's interesting.
The targets are getting so small in PRS. Like, you cannot waste a tenth on target anymore. You used to be able to have a 1 minute rifle and show up to a match and have a good chance. You can't. It's not possible anymore.
I've caught hell for saying this. So now it's turning into a precision rifle series.
Yeah, and honestly, the times used to all be 90 seconds, and now 1:45 to 2 minutes. So I 100% agree with you. And like boys from Oklahoma, they said that all the time. Why are we shooting so fast? This is a precision rifle match, and it's coming back towards it, I think.
Good. So I've caught hell over this because Jaden Quinlan, when I had him on, he said he shot PRS. I go, well, PRS is not really a precision sport, and of course that got some comments there, because they go, it's in the name. I go, I know it's in the name, but if it was a precision, like F-class is a precision sport, bench race is a precision sport. They let you do a lot to ensure that you are precise. Not accurate. Accurate on you, but precise. Whereas PRS, it seems like they're doing their best to not let you be precise, right? You have to shoot off a barricade, a wobbly barricade. They make you shoot off of, they make you shoot in 60 seconds. They make you, you know what I'm saying? But it seems like it's heading that way. And it's because the guys like you and others, the top shooter, they're getting so good that nobody wants, and that happened in F-class as well. F-class, the target used to be 2 MOA, the 10 ring. And then it got to the point where everybody was cleaning the targets. Like, everybody was hitting 600s. They're like, all right, well, it's time to shrink the target, right? And I think that's where you guys were at. You guys were getting so good at the top that, there was a few people that shot perfect scores at matches.
Yeah, Austin Bushman cleaned a 2-day pro match, and Ben Gossett cleaned the last day of the AG Cup to win the AG Cup.
Right.
And honestly, I would not, that one in particular, I would not have believed the target sizes unless I was there shooting the same match. Like, I would have thought, hey, this is a little, the targets were big, that's how he cleaned it. No, Ben Gossett shot the perfect day match, like at the 20, I think it was 22.
And I think that's the perfect balance where somebody that is absolutely on fire can still shoot a 600 or, a perfect day. Like in F class, 600s happen at 1,000 yards. They don't happen that often, Right. And that's just when somebody's absolutely on fire. They have the rifle, the condition. If it's windy, it ain't happening. But if it's the conditions are just right and they just happen to bring a really good rifle, 600s are possible, and they have happened, but it's still rare. It's not something where you gotta go, well, we gotta shrink the targets again. We're not there. And I think that's the perfect balance where you still can, if you're absolutely on top of your game, you can still get a perfect score,
I think it's possible. I haven't cleaned a day yet, but come really, really close. And even if you don't clean it, I think, if you have a match where you have 0 mental errors and you feel like you shot to your potential, like that is the ultimate. That's the ultimate goal.
I shot a 599 at 1,000 yards, and I still remember the 1-9 because it was a mental mistake. I shot, I was setting it up, and I saw the flag, and I go, man, that just seems like it picked up. And instead of safe sighting, which is what I do now that I have a lot more experience, I just went all in. Instead of trying to give myself a downwind 10, I went for the X, and I went way upwind to where instead of playing it safe, where if I was wrong, I could still catch a 10.
Yeah.
And if I was right, I would catch a 10. I went for either it's an X or 9, right? Instead of giving me a wide 9 on each side, a 10, upwind 10 or downwind 10, I gave myself an X or 9 option. I was wrong.
You still won the match?
No, lost to a 600. No. Well, I ended up winning. It was a 2-day match. I lost that day, but I ended up winning overall. But that day, somebody shot a 600. That was the first 600 I ever shot. I would have been the second one, and I had the X count, so I would have had the highest 600 ever shot. I would have had the range record, everything that goes with it. But the point is, I went all in on it, instead of safe sighting and going for 10, I went for an X, but I was wrong. So
I've done that before. PRS guys always say, like, you need to measure and correct yourself back to the center of the plate, but I don't think that's 100% true when the targets get really small. When the targets approach the size of your cone of fire, you cannot make a full correction because you don't know where that bullet was that basically told you the wind.
We call that safe sighting in F class.
Yeah.
We're not in the center, but we're in the side that we are safe,
Yep.
And sometimes that's typically if it's gusting, right? We tend to shift our center of our cone of fire, kind of upwind, and that way, if it gusts, it'll push you, but you still can catch a 10 on the other side, but, and I think you guys are going to get to that point. Like you're already mentioning it. You guys are there. When the target gets small enough, you have to safe side because the center is not always a safe place, which is my point about that 599 that I shot. I went for the center, whereas the alternative was a 9.
Well, I think this happens a lot with mid-pack or upper mid-pack shooters in the PRS too, because I call it, I tell them that shot lied to them. So you're describing from an F-class perspective where that your fundamentals are perfect, your rifle tracks straight into the rear, and you have 99.9% confidence that where that bullet went was where you told it or where you allowed it to go. But I see a lot of people, it's not that they think that they're better than they are, but they make a correction, 100% correction on a shot, and not realizing that the shot that they used to make that correction was not perfect. And I think it's not necessarily a rookie mistake, but it's like being too smart for your own good. As I was developing, becoming a better shooter, I would make corrections, and I missed more by making corrections because I realized that the shot that I saw or the one that I was correcting from lied to me. And I see that happen to people all the time. So you have to be honest with yourself. Did you send the perfect shot? If you didn't, then you need to do the safe side thing you're talking about and make sure that you're not making a full correction, because it can lie to you and burn you, and then you miss on the other side of the target pretty easily in what we do.
Well, that happens in F class too. When you have we call it a rifle that's not honest, because you go, man, my rifle's lying to me, right? And because the assumption is that we have the perfect everything, the guys at the top do, but the mid pack, like you said, those guys still have. You have to have good fundamentals even in F class, because you slap a trigger, it doesn't take much to push it out. You know what I mean? Or you don't follow through. I mean, trust me, I've seen it all, and it's very obvious. The guys at the top, they're very. It's like anything else, right? The guys that are always doing well, they have nice fundamentals. They have nice follow through. Their system. I mean, they're like robots. Like you can film two of their shots and overlay them, and they'll be like exactly the same.
Yep.
They have their ammo right. The economy of motion, all that good stuff. But because of that, that's also happens a lot where, I call it a flyer. We discussed flyers before, but the flyers go in any direction. People think they only go up and down. It's a flyer. It'll go anywhere. Well, the worst flyer is the one that goes sideways, because they'll shoot a 9 over there. And if they don't know their gun, or they don't have the experience to recognize a flyer, they'll just go all in on that one shot, and they'll chase it. And now they're out on the other side, and now they're lost. Instead of going, oh, wait, that first shot was wrong. Now they don't know which shot was wrong. Well, now they think the wind is really switchy, right? And now they go, the wind is really switchy. I'm not seeing it. I don't know what to do. And that just becomes very problematic for the score. And I've been there. I used to do it all the time. But me as a coach, as a wind coach, I'm standing behind the shooters. So I get to watch a lot of shooters shoot. And when you are a coach, you have to eliminate shots, because it's you have absolute wind reading, you have relative wind reading. Well, at some point we go into relative wind reading, right? The best way to read the wind is your previous shot. That is the absolute best way. Well, sometimes it's not, and you have to know when it's not. So oftentimes we'll see a shot up there and we're like, no, that's not there. We look at the flags, we look at the mirage, everything's the same. Like, that shot should never have went there. Ignore it. We go back to the same hole, right in the center, So that's experience. As far as I know, you can only get that from experience, is to have enough faith to eliminate the shots that didn't go where they were supposed to. And that, I mean, it's hard in F class with a controlled setup. I can only imagine what it's like for you guys when you're unstable with the clock.
You guys have the ability, or you guys can afford to wait for a gust or a lull. I mean, all we can do is kind of think about it and use probabilities. I mean, you take an average wind, and this time that the wind stays or spends at an average is a way higher percentage of the time than it spends in a gust, right? So the chance that you can feel a gust and do something about it, or take the value of the full gust. I see a lot of people writing average wind on their card and then a gust, like up to, but it'll almost never get to that gust, because the amount of time that it spends in that gust or in that highest scenario is such a small percentage. You're better off like going halfway between as your highest value between your average and your gust. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys do something similar.
I had a guy made a comment on my Facebook earlier, because I posted a group. It was like 12 shots, like 2.9 inches tall at 1,000 yards. and I think it was like 6 inches wide. And he said, and I described that it was, it was windy, and he said, well, it could not have been very windy because your shots are not very wide. I said, it's not the amount of wind that does that. It's the variation in the wind.
Yeah.
So I said 1 to 3 mile an hour will do the exact same thing as 25 to 28 mile an hour change. It's that 3 mile an hour change that will do it. It's not the amount of wind. And that is a huge thing that if anybody can take from this podcast is this: 20 mile an hour wind with zero variation is no different than zero wind. So if it's windy, don't be afraid of the wind. Be afraid, or never be afraid. But if something is going to scare you, it's the variation in the wind. I've shot some of my scores in really high winds because it was consistent. Mm-hmm. Consistency is what you're looking for. And honestly, I prefer to shoot in higher winds that are consistent because for some reason they tend to be more consistent than when you have that 1 to 2 mile an hour wind, because it seems like there's not enough mass there, and it seems like it'll just move around a lot versus a strong wind.
Yeah, the angles kind of are more reliable than in a low wind scenario.
Right. So what do you do when you're approaching a stage? You talk about don't use the gust. What do you do?
That depends on the range. If it's a square range with like trees or berms on the sides, it can be really hard using Mirage. I will use an app called Windy or other apps to give me like a average and maximum throughout the day in a direction. And you can kind of scroll through hour by hour and see when the direction is going to change. And I'll have notes so that when I show up, I'm kind of looking for those. Lots of times it will be a direction change. Once the sun comes up and thermals start changing, you can get, a 30 to 60 degree angle change. And I'm just constantly looking for that. I also use it to know, like, don't get out of hand here. The max is going to be 9 and the average is going to be 6. Like, don't tell yourself it's 12 or 15. If it is, it's a very unique scenario. Because a lot of the matches and a lot of times we shoot, there are a lot of ranges we shoot, you can't really measure it from the shooter's perspective. All you're doing is looking at vegetation, or the rare case where there's a flag or a streamer somewhere downrange. We hardly ever have flags. And then Mirage. And then once I start shooting, it becomes easier. It becomes easier and easier as the stages go on, because I'm honing in on something at the range and something that's telling me the truth. I'm going to compare what the bullet told me to a bush or the Mirage off of this pivot irrigation or something. And then all I got to do is look at that thing and say, is it more or less? And then by how much? And I think that anybody will say the hardest shot is usually the first shot of each day, because especially if it's a new range, you don't really know until you start shooting, and we don't get sighters. So you're on the clock and you have to make a call, and it becomes a mathematical, like you said, safe sighting. It's more of like an averaging using the whole target width. So I'll measure the target width and say it's 5/10 wide. I'll make sure that the best guess that I have fits on that plate. I don't care if it fits on the right side of the plate or the left side of the plate. I really don't care. You can't be emotional about it. You have to hit the plate and then see where it hit and then read it, and then use that to kind of stretch yourself out to distance. And I don't think anybody's perfect at it, but if you think about hitting a 0.5 mil wide target, I mean, that's almost 2 MOA. Can you do that at 600 yards? I think anybody in the top 50 in the PRS is going to have a pretty good chance of doing that. So don't get emotional about it. It's an average, it's a best guess, and it's using the probability of your cartridge and how much wind drift it has based on the BC.
One of the things that I discuss with new shooters all the time is, you said earlier that we have the option to stop and let the gust go by. We have the option, but not many shooters have the ability to do so. Once they start going, they're extremely afraid of stopping, because they go, when do I jump back in, right? So they're just trying to ride that wave, and it'll just destroy them, because that's a 1 MOA target. You're having to wait for the puller. It depending on the cartridge, it only takes about 3 to 4 mile an hour change for you to get blown out of the the 1 MOA target, right? So if there's a 3 to 4 mile an hour change from the last shot to the next one, that means you got to move ahead, at least half MOA, which is a big change for the new shooters to move, right? And then if they fell behind, that means they got to move twice as much automatic. Like I know this, like if it's gusting and I hit a downwind 9, I immediately move over a 1 full MOA, which is 2 rings on target. That's a bold move, but that's what needs to happen. Well, so I tell the newer shooters that I said, listen, you're afraid you don't want to stop because you don't know when to jump in. You're afraid to jump in with a 9. So instead, you'll sit there just pounding 9s as the wind's blowing, but you have an excuse, right? It was windy. Well, it doesn't have to be. Just wait. And I asked them the exact same thing. I said, listen, that 9 ring is 2 MOA. What is the percentage success that you give yourself if you had to do a cold bore shot at a 2 MOA target at 1,000 yards? They're like, oh man, I'd probably give myself 90 to 95%. I said,
it's pretty high. It's unbelievable to say this, but it's pretty high.
It's really high. I said, listen, so you're almost guaranteed a 9, almost 100%. So let's say you're going to hit a 9, especially because you've been shooting in these conditions, right? So it's not a cold bore shot. If it comes back to more or less what you were thinking, you have a full 1 MOA on each side. So you should be able to hit that almost 100% of the time. So stopping is going to cost you a point, maybe. I said, because what do you get if you hit the 9 right in the middle? You get an X.
You get a 10?
Yeah, a 10. You know what I mean? And I go, you're shooting for a 9, and sometimes you're going to hit in the middle. And that's an extra 10. And then, that really helps them to ease that anxiety of stopping. So now they hit the brakes and they kind of wait for what it looked like before. They jump in with a lot more confidence because now they're shooting to hit a 9. I said, sometimes you got to hit 9s. Don't worry about it. And their scores increase because, number one, they're not shooting as stressed out as they were before. And now they I tell you what, once they stop and jump back in and they hit a 10 or an X, their confidence level goes through the roof. And and
they're not shooting in a condition that's difficult. Anyway.
And it lets them know that, hey, I can do this. Next time, I'll just stop. And, if you got to stop 2 or 3 times, you might lose 2 or 3 points, worst case scenario. But when they didn't stop, they were dropping 8 or 10, So anyway, that's you have to have the confidence. Of course, you guys don't have that option, but, that's the difference.
But I mean, it's still, like I say, it's still part of my mindset to have that conversation with myself in my head. I just need to hit the plate. I don't even care if it's a 9 or a 10. Is it on the left or right edge or centered up? Once you hit the plate, honestly, my favorite hit is an edge hit, like a true edge hit to where you hit it so far on the edge that it ricochets. Because now I know exactly what the wind is, and I don't care if I hit an edge hit or a right side, left side. Honestly, center is sometimes the worst on a far plate because then the ROs sometimes have a hard time reading it. So I'm always constantly trying to slow myself down. And when people start getting really stressed out on a particular stage, thinking that it's impossible, that's where I try to take my mind to is what is the probability of hitting this plate, and the probability and what wind value, what error in wind value would cause me to miss this plate. Lots of times it comes down to a 3 mile an hour error, and I'm not going to have a 3 mile an hour error in wind. It's just after you've been shooting half the day, you're not going to have that. You're going to be within a mile an hour or so.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned edge hits. What I see some ROs are saying now they're 100% against edge hits. They're like, they don't count.
Never heard of that.
I have recently because we had some episodes on our you've seen our blackjack challenge and all that, and we get a lot of edge hits. And typically, if I'm calling it, I know what an edge hit looks like because I'll follow the trace. It's going right to the target. And all of a sudden, the impact's way over there. Well, I know what happened, right? So I give it to them. But when people score for me, they don't know what an edge hit looks like. So I never get the edge hits. And after the fact, when I'm reviewing the footage, I outline it and people go, whatever, that's not a hit, that it's hit way over there, whatever. So they're somewhat controversial. So
I would agree with that as if you are calling an edge hit just because you saw the bullet in a weird place. I wouldn't necessarily agree with calling it an edge hit. Like I'm talking about an edge hit where you see the target just go like this, like those kind of edge hits. It just shimmies over a little bit, or you do see a little puff on the edge, but the plate didn't rock, and then you see it way over one side. There's definitely edge hits. I agree with you that your only reason you're calling it an edge hit is because the bullet looked weird. I think that's kind of an awkward scenario. Your KYL has like a tube it goes through, I think, right? And so it doesn't rock like this, or is it on straps?
No, it's on straps.
Okay, so how thick are those plates? Half inch?
Yeah, they're pretty thick, half inch.
Okay.
So that's
the odds of
problem.
not seeing it is pretty weird. The odds of not seeing that plate move at all, pretty low.
We've hit that 2-inch though.
Yeah.
Edge hit it because it usually happens on the top because the bullet, when we did it at 1,000 yards, the bullet's coming in such an angle, and if it hits the top, it's pushing down against that strap. You know what I mean? And it's trying to push down on it. Well, it ain't going to push down on it. And that's typically where the edge hits happen. But some of the others are pretty heavy, and, they're shooting them with 6 BRs and 500 yards. They still carry a lot of energy, but still the plates are pretty heavy. And again, I follow the trace. And if it's leading right at the target, all of a sudden I see an easy way to tell is you get two impacts right on the berm. You get one over there, one over here. You're like, okay, that bullet split.
There's no other way.
Yeah.
I mean, then you got to get to where you have target indicators on everything. And the problem with that is when they fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they fall off or they don't work, then people don't get impacts called. So I don't think there's a perfect answer. And nobody wants to have somebody nobody wants an impact to not be called. They also don't want to be given an impact for the most part. I think all the competitors feel the same way and their match directors. So
yeah, I've been to a PRS match before, and, we're shooting like 900 yards, and, there's a lot of 6 BRs and such. And ROs had binos at that particular match. And I'm sitting with my Swarovski BTX 95, and I'm watching the thing, and it hit dead center.
Yep.
And they didn't call the hit. And I said, that was an impact. They're like, I didn't see it. And of course, I'm not going to argue with them. I was just kind of watching. Well, you know what happens now? The shooter's going to hold anything but their last hold, right?
Exactly. If they know what they're doing, they're going to hold a full plate probably.
And now that's two misses, right?
Yeah.
And then they move over there, they hit over there. Now they're like, move back. So that's the problem with that. And like I said, there's no perfect answer. And I get that. Unless they have cameras up close. Yeah. That would be an answer, but an expensive.
It'd be a lot of cameras.
Yeah, an expensive
But
answer.
I agree. I think it is still something that is a problem in the PRS. It's not the biggest problem, but I think it's significant. We'll just say that. I mean, it's stressful on the ROs. It's not great. It's not a great look for the match director and the shooters that are repeat customers, like the mid-pack shooters. It leaves a bad taste in their mouth. I think it's something that we want to get right for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't have the perfect answer at it.
Absolutely. So your 308 that you built, I mean, you're a gunsmith, 5x5 precision. Let's let people know that you're a top shelf gunsmith on top of everything else. I think I mentioned at the beginning, but so obviously you built that rifle yourself.
Yeah.
What components wise, what did you pick? And I mean, I assume you're trying to win a world championship. You picked as good a components as you could.
Yeah, I basically I didn't have an extra set of everything to put together this rifle in the timeline, so I took apart my 25x47, which I've been shooting a lot lately with those Berger 135s. I don't know if you messed with the 25 cal yet, have you?
I have a barrel, but I have not yet.
It's been pretty incredible, man. It shoots as tight as my BR. It's unreal. And since I've been shooting the 308, I've been shooting a lot of the 25 cal just because it is higher recoil. Why would I go back down to the BR when I get 40 points of BC benefit, pretty close to 50 with the 25 cal? Anyway, so I took that barrel off, and I basically contacted Jeff at Bartline, and I said, hey, I need a barrel ASAP. because I made the Team USA, and I only have about 2 months to train and get ready. And he said, well, what twist do you want? So I'm like, I don't know.
10 twist.
And so I contacted my buddy that's down the street. Paul Phillips. He's been on here before, and he shoots a lot of 308, right?
I don't know who that guy
Never
is.
heard of the guy.
Never heard of the guy.
So I contacted him. I contacted Brian. I asked Mitch. I said, what would you guys do? And the range of answers I got from the 5 or 6 people I polled was between 10 and 12. So I said,
11.
hell with it. Let's go 11. And so I got an 11 twist in my normal contour, which is a custom contour for me personally. I don't stock it because it's kind of an oddball and it's too heavy for some people, but it's 1 1/4 that tapers down to 1.15 at the muzzle. And I made it 28 inches because I knew I was shooting factory ammo and I wanted to be as fast as it could. And I got lined up with Morgan at Capstone, and Jeff helped me out and sent me that factory Lapua ammo, the 175 grain CNRs, and loaded with N150, which I was stoked about because I didn't realize they used N150 in that, but I love N150. Now I use it in everything from 6BR to 308.
It's my favorite powder, man. Outside of the triple nickel.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that would work good too, even. I bet you that would work good for me.
I love that powder.
So I took that to the range for the first time with a buddy. He was in the National Guard and he shot a lot of sniper comps. And I was like, you shoot a lot of 308. Bring your 308. Let's go shoot. And the first group I laid down after I took my one-shot sighter was 5 rounds, and it was 0.3 inches at 100. I'm like, uh-oh. Everybody else is screwed. If this is how this gun is going to shoot, this is awesome. And just gave me a lot of confidence. And so as far as the rest of the components, they're pretty straightforward. I use the Lone Peak Fusion Action. I'm a Leupold guy. I shoot the Leupold Mark V and MDT chassis, the Elite. I'm pretty sure you have the Elite, ACC Elite.
Yep.
Yeah. All dressed out the way I like it, which it doesn't really help precision, but it's more ergonomics. And I feel like ergonomics is super important for PRS when you get into the positional type stuff, especially with something like this that's a heavier recoiling cartridge. And then the big thing for me too was putting that Area 419 Maverick. It's like a hybrid suppressor on there because it just keeps the concussion down, and it helps me keeps my head in the game. I get beat up pretty good from a break. I shoot over 10,000 rounds a year, and since I switched to that Maverick, I have not had fatigue over the course of the weekend, mental or other. So been pretty awesome. Trigger Tech trigger. I know you shoot those 1 ounce Flavio.
Not in my PRS rifles. I shoot Trigger Techs in my PRS rifle.
They're great, man. They're sealed up. I don't have to adjust them. I run it about 10 ounces. I got this little 2-stage trigger. This is my first stage where my finger straightens out. I'm only using a single stage, but that's kind of how I set it. So when I push it here, it's about 8 ounces, and then it breaks once my finger gets to 90 degrees.
I haven't been excited about triggers in a while, but that MDT electronic trigger.
I shot it last week. It was awesome.
Dude, I every time I see Ryan, he lets me shoot it, and oh my God, it just keeps getting better and better. And it's so hard. You talk about movement. You think you're moving, but you're not moving. That's so it almost feels like I thought about shooting and the shot went off because there was no movement, but it was just pressure. I can't wait to see. I cannot wait to throw that in an F-class rifle and see how it does. And
I'm hoping it'll be this year, but I don't know.
I have a feeling they're going to make it illegal for F-class. I think it's getting to the point where, we talked about F-class, how they're pretty wide open with the rules, but I think something like that might go over the spirit of the competition, because I think that would be such an advantage. I don't know yet, but I love it. I don't know yet either. I just, the feel, it just, I don't know. Because it's going to be super consistent. Yep.
No, it's nice, very predictable. Allegedly, the lock time and the time that it takes for when it breaks to release everything is supposedly quicker. So I, like you said, I don't see how it couldn't help I think it only goes down to 4 ounces, so you might be disappointed in that.
Oh,
but whatever.
It just feels different, you know. It just I
The
can
cool
do 4
thing
ounces.
was Ryan was standing there, and he's like, what do you want the trigger pull set to? And he's got the rifle in his hands, and he starts poking it, and like 2 seconds later, it's now set to 10 ounces. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. You can adjust the pull weight.
That is crazy. Yeah, because he said
there's some other ideas we have to it. I want to talk to you about it offline, but yeah, I'm pretty excited about it as well.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Heck yeah. I mean, the other thing that I do, which some people might be surprised, is I always bed my actions to my chassis. I feel like it's just extra insurance.
What?
You don't do that?
Yeah, of course I do.
Okay.
But that's an
I think
I just always think like so there's so much that I do that I don't even want to tell people because I don't know. It's like, well, they're going to be like, this guy's an idiot. You don't have to do that. But then to hear someone like you say that, I'm like, oh, okay. Because I hope this doesn't sound wrong, but you know, I'm like an F-class guy coming down to PRS, you know, like again, it sounds bad, but you know, like
how about looking up?
We're going, you know, we're going down, you know, like for example, I got to go to repeaters, right? Got to go to even ejectors. I use ejectors because I don't want to ding up my brass, right? So there's so much that I, you know, have a front rest that it's all mechanical. Now I got to go to a bipod. So, you know, it's like I'm going from F class down to PRS, right? Mm-hmm. Because you need functionality and we don't have that with our rifles. So you have to, there's some compromises, right? So again, I feel like going down, but I'm trying to go down as little as possible and still meet the functionality requirements, right? Whereas typically I see as PRS guys going from, I don't know, maybe hunting or maybe just plinking up to PRS, right? Like they're building better rifles than what they have. And, you know, I'm coming down, they're coming up, but it's like, where's that line, you know? And now you're saying, well, I'm bet my rifles. Well, our rifles are bedded and glued, right? I'm not going to glue in, but I'm still going to bed it, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of PRS guys go, yeah, you don't need that.
We had a whole episode on this, and I'm not sure if you're still following the podcast. I won't blame you if you missed a few. But we have an episode called Is It Statistically Significant? And it's kind of a play off of some of the discussions people have had using and throwing that phrase out. But we really stayed away from the topic that you're talking about.
It's amazing how many statistics expert came up after that episode. It's just everybody. Trust me, I've heard it more than probably anybody else. But anyway, keep going.
But we didn't take it. We didn't take it the direction that you could probably assume based on who I'm talking to right now. We took it in the direction that what are you doing? What are you doing with your process that actually gives you a measurable result? And if you're not doing it, or if you stop doing it, would it be the same? And I think there's different levels of significance when you go from F class. I think you're trying to say down to the PRS guys. You know, there's different levels.
Not the guys, but the equipment. You know, like you're like it's like an F1 card, and you're bringing it down to whatever else it would be below F Formula 1. You know, the people move around. You know, you know, just, you know, I've been an F-class shooter, I've been a PRS shooter, I've been a hunter, I've been a plinker. People move around, but the equipment is somewhat set. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean. Like I'm coming down from the mentality of how to build an F-class rifle, and I'm going down to the mentality of how to build a PRS rifle. But it's hard for me to let go of the glass bedding. It's hard for me to let go of the light triggers, you know. But I have to.
Do you neck turn your PRS press?
No, so that's what I mean. Like okay. You know, I
talk me out of doing that.
Yeah,
because once you do it once, it's done.
Yeah, until you get new brass again.
Yeah.
If I was at the level that you're at, I probably would turn brass.
Damn it.
I mean, you're looking for a point, like one etch hit over a week, you know. A lot of guys in F-class kind of got away from neck turning, and they say that it didn't have a measurable decline in their performance.
Yeah,
but I can't really think of anybody that won anything while they were shooting well. I
just think that neck tension is one of the most important aspects of your ammunition.
I think it's the only thing that matters.
Yeah. So to me, I've tossed the idea around in my head for a couple years now, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm maybe I'll do it someday and see if I can see any measurable results. But man,
That's
if
gonna
my
be the
308's shooting like a quarter inch all the time, I'm probably not going to mess with it
yeah.
for what we're
Again,
doing.
it's like where are you at, right? Like you're saying, well, this thing shoots like point 0.3. That's you're well below what you need to win matches, right?
Yeah.
If my guns were without neck turning, if I could shoot below 5 inches at 1,000 yards, I'm always trying to hit the X ring. I don't care about the 10 ring. I want to hit the X ring 20 times out of 20. If
Yeah.
I could get that without neck turning, I'd do it, but I can't, So anyway, so betting, you decided that's something that gives you enough of an advantage that it
I
warrants
think
doing.
that for the effort, it is I call it an insurance policy because if you bump into a barricade or, whatever, you can get a point of impact shift pretty quick. And I think once you get better, we were talking about it earlier. Once you get better, the worst thing that you can have is a shot that lies to you because you're going to be really good at seeing it and measuring it. So all it takes is one shot to lie to you in some soupy, miragey conditions, and now you've got a 6 out of 10 on a stage instead of a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
And that's freaking huge. So I bet all my chassis. I'm not in it for the resale value. I beat them up. If they start looking too crappy, I'll just Cerakote them again or whatever. But I really don't care. I'm function over beauty every day of the week. And so I want it to be durable. That's why I do it.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about holding zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I bet them, because I'm like, I want this thing to be solid. Like I'd glue them in if I could. And I've talked to some of these chassis manufacturers and I go, hey, can you make me one that I can glue in? The difference is that you have to be able to get the trigger out of the bottom. That's the difference. If it wasn't for the trigger, you would have never need to take it out. But my F-class rifles are glued in simply because bedding is great, but there's still slight amount of movement, right? If you glue it in, you're done.
I shoot the Lone Peak Fusion actions. I don't know if you've seen them before, but the bottom is faceted. It's not fully round and it's not flat like some actions. It actually has like these 6 or 8 different facets on the bottom. So once I bed it in, it's like a Lego fit.
Like a bat multi-flat.
I haven't seen that, but it sounds like
they call it the
thing.
multi-flat. Yeah, it's just got a bunch of facets. Yeah. It's like losing weight. You're like, hey, just give up soda. And if you're fairly overweight, you're going to lose quite a few pounds just by giving up soda, right? And then you're like, give up sugar altogether. But once you're fit and you've been going to the gym and you want to drop another 10 pounds, it's really hard. Like, well, I got to start running. I got to do more cardio. I got to do, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just becomes, it requires more to do less, but the less is more important. Mm-hmm. You how many times have you lost by 1 point, right?
Yeah. I've lost by more than 1 point a lot of times, but
it's one, right? How many times?
Yeah.
And when you start, it's like, well, I'm losing by 30 points. What's 1 point going to do at this point, right? And it's because your fundamentals, your precision building, the way you approach a target, whatever. I mean, I went to PRS matches and I forgot to dial my freaking dope. Like, well, how is betting going to help with that? But my rifle was bedded.
Yeah.
But, it's at some point, like I said, when you're up at the top and you're fighting for 1 point, not even a day is over 2 or 3 days. Betting doesn't sound crazy. Neck turning doesn't sound that crazy. Bullet sorting doesn't sound that crazy,
Yeah.
But if you're shooting factory ammo.
Well, I was going to say, we could bring this full circle if you got another 15, 20 minutes.
Sure.
Okay. So we started this discussion on goals, like the last episode, right? And that's kind of was the premise for having another discussion. I know you didn't bring me on here just to like give me a high five, probably.
I did, man. I am very proud of what you've done, especially because I know how hard you work at it. And if there's anything that I want people to understand is that you're not that talented. You work really hard.
I know.
I mean,
no, I'm not.
And I'm not either. And I don't know. I have yet to meet somebody that I go, that guy's just so talented. He never practices. The most talented people people look at and go, this guy's so talented. They work really freaking hard. So, yeah.
So that's kind of where I want to go with this. What if I told you that goals really didn't matter?
Keep going.
They really don't. Do you think that anybody going to that match, or any match for that matter,
they all had the same goal?
They all have the same damn goal. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you break it down to get to actionable items. And read this book recently, and I'm going to share it with you and whoever else wants to listen. My wife and I started this thing where we're listening to podcasts, or we're reading books so that we have some discussion points. And she picked this book called Atomic Habits. And you would think, what does that mean? Like atomic habits. Atomic habits to me before reading the book meant like habits that like make you explode or get you to the next level, right? No, this book is all about those 1% gains, and like the size of an atom, the smallest possible thing that you could possibly do, and then sustain it and stack it up to going from the middle of the pack to having that mindset or that result that you say all the time. I think you'll call Francis, or you'll call myself, and you'll be like, hey man, I told you, you can't avoid winning. Getting from the middle of the pack, or the top 10% or the top 5%, and winning your first match. People will see it from the outside looking in as, man, it just clicked for him. He just figured it out. Hell no. He's been doing all these little things in the background such that they stacked up to where the scales tipped in your favor. It's like an ice cube sitting on the table. If it's 30 degrees in the room, the ice cube is not melting, right? 31 degrees, it's not melting. 32 degrees, now it starts melting. And people see, well, something changed. No, things have been changing this whole time. You just didn't see it. So you need to find out these small incremental, they need to be related to your goal. You need to have green, yellow, and red. Green it supports your goal. Yellow, it's kind of neutral. And red, this is actually distracting me from my goal. And then you need to pick things that you can do that will stack and build you up towards your goal. Like there were things on my list that were constant mistakes or constant things that I was either blaming or finding that they were contributing to me losing matches. And one of them was my eyesight. I was just getting used to being old and not seeing very well. But I'd never gone to the optometrist and got checked out. Like I'm wearing contacts right now. And so I basically took something that was dragging me down, it was costing me time on the clock. I would look at my turret to dial it, and I would stare at it for 5 seconds and make sure that I was on the right number. Now I can see it, I dial it, I go, shoot the target. It was adding to my physical and mental stress throughout the course of the day, such that I was making more mistakes at the end of the day because my brain was focusing in my scope and then back to my turret and back to my scope and back to my turret. And there's other things that you can't necessarily prove are benefiting your ultimate goal, but they sure as hell don't hurt, like physical fitness. Like when I was staying at your house, I got up at 6. I always get up early. But you were up before me and you were on the damn treadmill. It can't hurt to be physically fit, mentally aware, and morally straight. I think that's like part of the Boy Scout code. Back in the day, I had to say that when I showed up to the Boy Scout meeting. But there's certain things that you just know are the right things to do, and they will help you towards your goal, and then avoid the things that distract you from it. But I think that book, it reminded me of a lot of the things that on the philosophies that I had that allowed me to be successful. It like revitalized them for me, such that I wasn't really straying from the things that allowed me to be successful. I just wasn't maintaining the things that I already proved were making me successful, if that makes sense. And I really tried to focus on the small things, because sometimes just putting on your running shoes will help you carry out the task of going for a run. Like I wouldn't put on my running shoes and go sit on the couch. Sometimes you need to pick something so small that will lead you and link you to behavior that allows you to be successful. And I think the goal, once you've written it down or once you've decided what it is, it's only there to provide direction for all the breakdown of all the tasks that you need to do. And honestly, I didn't really think about the goal until I made the team. It's like, oh, okay. So I checked off that box of making the team. Now what's my next goal and how am I going to achieve it?
Makes sense. And it's not just one thing, like you said, everybody had the same goal, right? We recognize that. But like you said, it's what did you do to get it? What did you actually, and I'm sure a lot of others were there that they tried. They weren't the only one that was doing all this work, right? I mean, this is a world championship, right?
Right.
But I don't know. It seems like mentally at some point it's right here, and you can be the best shooter in the world, but if you crash and burn, when the stress gets too high, then you're never going to win. It's going to be very hard to win. And, I told you I started golfing, and that mentally, that is a test. I go out and I play better guys than me for money, and I go, I'll play for money. Yeah. They're like, what? I'm like, I don't care. I mean, I might lose $50, right? But the point is, I want to be under stress, but more importantly, I want to put them under stress. And guess what? These guys that are really good, the minute we start playing for money, they turn into these guys that just can't hit the freaking ball. And the more they crash and burn, the stronger I feel. Like the more confident I get, and it seems like I start playing better because I'm like more hyper focused, and they're so worried about hitting a bad shot that they hit a bad shot because all they keep thinking is, don't hit a bad shot, don't hit a bad, And
I mean, negative thoughts compound. Yeah, negative thoughts will build on each other. So
I don't think the brain can tell the difference between saying hit a good shot and don't hit a good shot, or a bad shot, same thing, right? If you say don't hit a bad shot, I don't think the brain, I don't know how that works. I don't know if they can tell the difference. So instead of saying don't hit a bad shot, say hit a good shot. I think the brain only hears is bad shot and good shot. It doesn't hear that do or do not.
I 100% agree with that. And I'll take that a step further. Be careful who you surround yourself with. I mean, seek out people that have similar goals to yours, have similar attitude and mindset, positive, and when times are tough or things aren't great, like are there to support you and not tear you down. I can't stand when I see people at matches like giving each other a hard time. I don't want to be associated with that. And that's not because I can't handle it. In a competitive space, I want to only see myself hitting the target. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to visualize it and then make it happen. And if somebody comes up to me after a stage or during a match, how's it going? Right? How you shooting? I'm shooting great. I'm shooting really good. Or somebody comes up, like this happened to me at the last match. What happened on the last stage? I don't remember. I'm already worried about the next stage. Like I know what happened. I'm just not going to verbalize it.
Right.
I know what happened. I wrote the wrong dope on my turret, whatever. Or I read the wind wrong, whatever. Like those things will happen.
I shot
the
great.
Sooner you can leave it.
That's always my answer. How'd you do? I shot great. No, seriously, tell me. I shot great. They associate score with performance, and I don't think they're connected. Because I've shot some really bad scores, and I've just shot like my system was perfect, everything was perfect. The gun or I was behind the wind or whatever, but I stopped when I said I was going to stop. I went in with a plan. I said, okay, if the wind gets, if I have to hold more than 2 MOA, I'm stopping, and once I got out there, I stopped. And then be like, I'm going to jump back in when there's half a MOA to 1 MOA of wind. And when they get to that point, I jump back in. I jump in with a 10 or an X, and then, whatever. But I dropped a few points in the process, and they're like, what happened? I'm like, I shot great. How'd you shoot?
I ran my plan.
Why? Because I executed my plan to perfection. The score didn't reflect it, but my plan, and I'm literally getting off the line going, man, I did it. I did exactly what I said I was going to do. It didn't work out, but I did exactly what I said I was going to do, which in itself is, to me, is more of a victory than putting up a good score, because this will lead to more consistency over time. And again, you keep improving. You can't avoid winning.
You can't avoid winning. Yep. I think people struggle, I think, taking their goal down to like these little small 1% incremental things that have influence. And I can't really help define those things for the person. I can just tell you like how my mind works and taking an overall goal and knowing that, above all things, I need to be prepared. I need to have confidence in my system. I need to have the things done weeks ahead of time. That's my match has already started mindset. But when I think about my shooting goals and how to achieve them, it all boils down to sending the perfect shot so that I can watch it, so that I can make a correction. And however you distill your process down to setting that perfect shot, there is nothing more important than that natural point of aim, trigger control, follow through. And so for me, like that's about the only thing that I need to focus on in a match once I've done my system and prepared my rifle and everything. I know Morgan King has a saying, dope rifle scope, and it stands for setting his dope on his turret, make sure his rifle's set up with his bipod, and make sure that everything is set with his scope and parallax and everything. Like come up with your own process for the different layers of shooting a stage, and then distill it down to one action that is linked with half a dozen others. So you don't have to have this checklist that's like 20 things long. For me, it's breathing. Like when I exhale, I automatically interact with the trigger and press through and press through the trigger and follow through. And the only other thing I think about is watching. So I know if I tell myself that I have to watch, then I know intuitively I can't watch unless I've sent the perfect shot. So if I just walk up to a stage and say, watch, and then I get down behind the rifle and I think breathe, like those are the two things that will help me execute a perfect shot. And what matters more than executing a perfect shot? You learn the wind, you know where you're hitting on the target, and you just repeat, and it becomes easy and stress-free if everything else is happening autonomously. I don't know. It's different for everyone, but I think that the ultimate goal is putting your goal in writing and then breaking it down into elements that you feel have a direct influence on you achieving that goal, and not doing the other things. Don't do the other things. One of my favorite quotes is from The Office. You ever watch that show?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Dwight Schrute has this quote. He's like, whenever I ask myself what an idiot would do, or what does he say?
What is the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?
Don't be an idiot. Changed my life. Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing.
So you have to know, like, there's certain things intuitively that do not help you achieve your goal. And I think people spend a lot of time and energy and effort living in those spaces. There's just so many distractions in today's world. Like, if you're not continuously working towards something that has an influence on your goal, then it's keeping you from your goal.
Absolutely. World champion, Chad Heckler. Thank you very much, man. Congrats again.
Thanks.
And I know you ain't stopping now.
No way. You just getting started.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, thanks for being here. Good stuff. Miles to matches. If people want to follow Chad, him and Francis have this podcast. I listen to, when I'm on the road, I listen to your podcast a lot. So Miles to Matches, it's great. 2 top shelf PRS shooters, incredible people. I mean, I love, some of the best podcasts are the ones where you guys talk very little about shooting and just talk about life in general. That's
those are my favorites.
Those are my favorite as well, just because we get to see how you guys really are, and you guys interact with each other so well. You guys complement each other. It's amazing to see what you guys both have achieved, and it's incredible, man. I'm proud to be your friend, and I'm proud that I was, in some minute part of your world championship win and becoming a world champion.
To be quite honest, you're a big part of it. It's inspirational and motivational and empowering is the best word. Like meeting somebody like you and talking through this stuff, it feels so good to know that there's other people that have the same mindset and the same drive and that are excited for each other. And, you know, Francis won the 2024 AG Cup, and I could not be happier. Like, I was honestly almost more happy than when I won it, because I saw him get to earn it through the course of 6 years. Like, I got to see it. And for him to be able to realize that was freaking incredible. It was cool.
Great stuff, man. Chat, thank you very much, man.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Take
Have
care.
a good day.